This is where we started from at the exploration towers.
Cruise terminal number 10, you can just sort of see the outline of the parking garage that used to have the state of Florida's largest outdoor art on the side of it. They took it down and faded away. And there is cruise terminal number 10. And there is a Carnival cruise ship in port right there. I can't make it out. There is the Disney cruise terminal, built to look like the Steamboat Willie movies from the 30s. And there is the Disney Fantasy, one of the largest cruise ships in the world. 4,200 passengers and a crew of over 2,000. Yeah, that's a 7-day Eastern Caribbean, 7-day Western Caribbeans here every Saturday morning.
Cape Canaveral Lighthouse Foundation, I would like to welcome you to Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. You're going to see a lot of historical spots that date back to just right after World War II, when we were developing a ballistic missile program, and then starting in the 60s, the Man in Space program. This is still an active station, and a lot of launches will be going off in the next year. They predict around 36 in 2016 will be going off from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. The first thing you're going to be seeing will be on your right, and please do not make pictures of this building. It is one of the most secured areas. It's called MOC, the Morel Operations Center. This is the heart of everything that happens at Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Nothing is launched from either facility without the authorities in this building determining that it's safe and that everything is ready to go for launch. So it is a very, very important building. American to launch their Navajo, and the Navajo is kind of interesting. Of the 11 launches, 8 of them failed. She blew up a lot, or just didn't go off the pad. However, the developments that were made with the Navajo are very significant. Her liquid fuel engines will later be used in the Redstone, which becomes the workhorse of our early Man in Space program. And her cruise control will later be used in the Hound Dogs that were mounted under the wings of the B-52s. And the missile that was developed there is known as the Minuteman, and it's actually still a part of our nuclear ballistic missile defense system. And the Air Force plans to use it until 2030. But it was tested here. There were 2 types of launch pads. One is called the pedestal, which is above the ground. Most of the ones you're familiar with are the pedestal ones. And then 2 silo underground ones. And the reason they developed the Minuteman, and they call it that because it could go in a minute, theoretically, but it certainly could go faster than these other ballistic missiles, which had liquid fuel, which is very, very flammable, very volatile, very corrosive to the rockets, and they would not load the fuel until about 3 hours before launch. But the Minuteman used a solid fuel which could be put in and left in, and they could store the Minuteman down in an underground silo until maybe we were being attacked and they had to launch it. So the Minuteman is still being used, and there are a lot of places around the United States where they have silos that were used for the Minuteman program. And the white building here, just before the Beehive blockhouse, was the blockhouse for the Navajo. Pad 10 would have been over here on our left, but it was torn down to make room for the Minuteman launches. But Pad 9, from which all of the Navajos were launched, is straight ahead of us. We'll be passing it.
They're probably still working it.
Turn around.
This is the worst part. We got up and down, we got no access, and
Figure or a mythical monster that didn't really exist, but these 3 guys set out in search of the Snark for some strange reason. And for some strange reason, Northrop named their new missile the Snark. The Snark was unusual in that they designed it that it could be brought back down, but it didn't have any landing gear. Instead, it had plates along its belly, I call it, along its bottom, and it would come in and just skid in on the ground. So they built a landing strip for the Snark, and it is called the skid strip. Later, the skid strip will be updated so that actual airplanes can land there. Even the president could come in if he were coming to see a launch or something. He would land here on what was, if they still call it the skid strip, but of course it's paved now. It has the lights for a landing. They can also bring in a lot of rocket parts and things like that from other places where they're being constructed. They can bring them here and land them at the skid strip and then transport them to the hangar for assembly and then to the pad for launch. So we'll be watching for the skid strip. There were 7 astronauts in the Mercury program. That's what the 7 is about. The symbol is the astronomical symbol for the planet Mercury. The monument is 13 feet tall and 7 feet wide left to right and 1 foot thick. It is made, and we're going to sit here long enough for everybody to get pictures, so you people who are on my side, if you'll wait just a sec to let the other people, if they say, okay, come on, hang over me, then go ahead, so everybody gets the opportunity. It is made of the same kind of stainless steel that the Atlas was made from, and that's why it hasn't rusted or deteriorated. In front of the symbol for the Mercury program is a medallion with the bust of the 7 astronauts on it. You can kind of see it a little bit. In front of that is a large rectangular bronze plate, and underneath that is a time capsule which will be opened in 2434 or something like that. So if you want to reserve to come back on this tour then to see it when it gets open, on that plaque it has 2 things. It has a dedication that this is dedicated to all the people who work in the space program, not just the astronauts, but all the engineers and other workers, and I'll talk a little bit about some of them in just a moment. And across the top of it is a mathematical formula, which is the speed that something has to get up to in order to leave the Earth's gravity, and that's what we were doing here. We were going to put people into orbit around the Earth. John Glenn being the first American who orbited the Earth, and there's a little plaque specifically to him a little bit to the right of this monument. Below that, the dedication, there is a Latin phrase which, if translated, says, "If you seek my monument, look around you." This is not original to this plaque or to this Air Force Station, but rather it was Sir Christopher Wren's sarcophagus in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, because his monument was St. Paul's Cathedral. And so I thought it was appropriate that we took that quote, though, and put it here, because if you seek the monument to our space program, look around you. It was designed first to be sure we could send somebody up into space and bring them back alive, and then secondly, that we could orbit the Earth. Well, the next step is, can we leave the protection of the capsule and get back in? Can we operate in space? Can we guide a capsule in space? And so the second program towards putting man on the moon was the Gemini program. Now, the symbol of the Gemini program is a giant Roman numeral 2. It has the 2 stars of the Gemini, the twin stars of the Gemini constellation. There's another 2. Because there will be 2 men in the capsule, because they're going to work together, and there will be 2 capsules. Now here's where 14 comes back in on it. From pad 14, an empty capsule would be launched. It was an Agena, which is something that's used for a lot of different things, and in this instance it was being used to give the astronauts a vehicle to rendezvous with and to climb into and out of and so forth, so they could practice that type of stuff up into space. So from pad 14, the Agena will be launched, and from here, the Gemini capsule on a Titan. That's what the GT is, Gemini Titan. The capsule belonged to NASA, but the Titan belonged to the Air Force, and the Air Force did all the launches from pad 19 using Titan 1 and 2. There was a Titan 3, but it was not used in the Gemini program. It will be used later for other things. But the Gemini Titan launches went from pad 19. I want to tell you a little bit about particular ones. GT3, the first one that was manned, you notice that Gus Grissom was one of the astronauts. Does anybody remember what happened to Gus Grissom?
Yes, he died in the fire.
before that. I'm sorry, I got a comma when he went up in the Mercury program. He came back down, and what happened? He lost his capsule. Boy, it sank, didn't it? Now, after that, there was all of this debate. Did he open it too early, or did it open itself? Well, this kind of went on and on, you know, but he maintained a great sense of humor about it, because when he named his Gemini capsule, he named it Molly Brown, because there was a Broadway play on stage, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, about a woman that had survived the Titanic. So I think it was, you know, kind of tongue in there. The launch pedestal that you're looking at is the site where our 3 astronauts died in 1967 in the Apollo 1-5. The Apollo program started here, Launch Complex 37 as it was then, and Launch Complex 34. Now you have to remember, they were not launching that giant Saturn V. They were launching the Saturn 1B, which is much, much smaller. But they
You know all this stuff is?
Mm-hmm. It's a rocket motor right there.
beautiful harbor, or what we can see of it today. And you will see to your east, you will see the Norwegian Spirit. It's very hard to see today, though. Leave this afternoon around 5 o'clock. And to your right is cruise terminal number 6, about a little over 3 years old, built at a cost of about $63 million. And what was interesting about cruise terminal number 6 was it was built complete from start to finish in 152 days. First cruise ship to sail into cruise terminal number